Okay, this video is a little bit impromptu, but I wanted to make it in response to a message that I got because it's a really common question about the effect of weed on your recovery process after a bad trip. So let me read the message and then I'll talk about kind of a response to it. So this person said, I was wondering if weed can affect the way you recover or affect the time it takes to recover. I feel okay, but I still have this weird kind of empty feeling in my head, and I don't know if it's the weed or if it just takes a little while to recover. Yes and no. The weird empty feeling in your head is something that I hear about. I hear a lot. A lot of people have this, and it's just kind of one of the things that come out of a really intense trip. Any kind of acid trip is generally going to give you a weird feeling the day after, an afterglow. Sorry, by the way, it's thundering right now, so if you hear lots of loud booms, I don't have any control over it. But, you know, if you have a trip that lasts all day, one day, and then you wake up the next day and you feel kind of like hungover, or you have a headache, or you just don't feel great, it's normal. I mean, think about how much was going on with your brain chemistry, how much was getting dumped out, and it's just, you know, even if you think about it like a hangover, kind of. It's just, you go through some really intense experience, your brain chemistry is going to be a little bit off, your energy is going to be a little bit off, and you're going to be tired because of everything that you experienced was so intense and beyond your normal range of perception and experience. So an afterglow is very normal, and on a good trip or a really mild trip, I would expect that to last like a day. But with more intense trips, I mean, if it really had a powerful effect on your brain chemistry and your psyche and your emotions, it can last for a little bit longer. I don't want to give a timeline for that because everybody's so different, but it can last for longer than you would expect. And I see it as kind of the process of your brain chemistry rebalancing. You know, you just dumped a bunch of a chemical into your system that your brain's not used to, your emotions aren't used to, and so it's going to take a little bit of time to get in the groove of what your normal experience is. And if you put a lot of terror and emotional strife on top of that, what you can end up with is that weird feeling for a little while. But it's not going to last forever, I promise. It's really not. It does go away. So as far as weed goes, weed, that was particularly big. Weed as part of the bad trip recovery process is something that gets brought up a lot. And my basic kind of idea with that is that you really want to be careful. Weed is, in my opinion, a mild psychedelic. I even see people have difficult trips with weed alone. It's probably a lot more common than you would think. But being that it's a mild psychedelic, it can take your brain into a similar place and take you emotionally into a similar place as an acid trip or mushroom trip or something like that, such that if you're just recently coming off of that kind of really difficult, intense experience, being put back into that same sort of feeling can make you essentially feel the same level of anxiety, because all of a sudden you're back where you were when you were having such terror. So it's something that you want to be careful with. I've heard a lot of people say, I had this bad trip and then I tried to smoke weed and it made me feel like I was in the trip again, and so I've just had to stop smoking weed. That's probably not a bad idea, because I'm not scared of thunder, but it's so close. It's just like right there. Hopefully we don't get struck. You might want to give yourself a break. It's okay to give yourself a break from drugs. It's actually kind of a good thing every once in a while. And if pot is part of your daily life, it might be really hard to give yourself that break, but you might be really needing it if that's the case. I know that the few times that I did smoke weed after my bad trip, like soon after, and again, I've never been a daily or a daily weed user or anything remotely close to that. But so my tolerance was always pretty low. But I had some, I wouldn't say it put me back in the zone of the trip, but there was a new level of anxiety, and maybe it was the weed I was smoking, which was different than the weed I'd smoked before, or something like that. But the bad trip, I've talked a little bit about like the effect it might have on your brain chemistry in this video, but you also have to think about the fact that the bad trip changes you emotionally. It introduces a whole new spectrum of feelings and emotions and fear into your system. And so if you smoke weed again, you might have a totally different reaction to it. You might, now that you have some new fear in your system, you might feel the sensation of getting high or becoming a little bit less in control of yourself when you smoke, and then that might trigger a new feeling that you're not used to, whereas before you were totally comfortable with the feeling of being high. So all that said, if you want to try it, if you're like, okay, I'm really experienced with weed, it's really part of my life, I'm gonna try it and see how it is. Just be slow, be careful, and kind of know why you're using it. That's something that I really try to emphasize a lot on my site and in these videos, is know why you're doing the things you're doing. And it can kind of be hard to really come to terms with why you're doing the things that you are, but if you can do that, it's very helpful for you in the long run, because you start to get to know yourself better, and you start to get connected with your real motivations for doing things, which is something that is very good, and it's part of this whole process of healing. So know why you're doing it. If you're doing it to help with anxiety, it might be effective for you, but if you're doing it as like a party thing, or just to be with your friends or something, it may not be the right time for that. It may be time to kind of dial it back a little bit. Everyone's different, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to prescribe something, because you know you, and you know what you need to do with yourself, and you're gonna have to experiment to see how it affects you. But as far as using weed for anxiety, yeah, that might be effective. If you don't now have anxiety when you smoke, it may be effective. And what I am comfortable recommending to people who feel like it would be good for them is CBD products. I'm not like an expert in this at all, but there are some products that I've used and had some success with, so you could try that. And the reason I'm more comfortable recommending that is something that's pretty much all CBD, as much THC as you can remove from this situation, is going to have less of that psychedelic effect, and therefore have a smaller chance of really getting you high, or putting you in a situation that feels scary like the trip did, and then starts this whole anxiety thing. So that is about it. It's really a personal decision, and you'll have to experiment with it, but my personal choice was that I wanted to get away from all substances during the process of healing. I really wanted to give my brain a rest, my system a rest, and my emotions a rest. And during that process, I also was addicted to nicotine at one point, and after quitting that, and going through the process of quitting and getting rid of an addiction, I didn't want to do anything that was a habit and that I ended up relying on, because I was just so shocked at how awful the process of quitting an addiction was, and just wanted to put myself as far away from that as possible. And so I will say that if pot is a daily part of your life, and you would consider yourself a heavy pot user, then you may want to continue using it, because this heightened state of anxiety that you're in right now might be not the best environment to quit in, because a lot of people want to say that weed is not addictive, but if it's part of your daily life, you would be surprised what would happen if you started to not use it anymore. And it's hard. I lived with someone for 2 years who was a daily pot smoker and then quit, and it was definitely a addiction withdrawal process. But yeah, none of that to try to scare you, but just these are the real things. These are the real things that you need to consider. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. Again, it's really very common to it's common for weed to play a role in the bad trip situation, and